Hello, my name is Voya and welcome to My Deep Guide, and in today's video we're going to do a quick comparison between the Supernote A6X, the old one, and the Supernote A6X2, the one that's replacing it, and I'm going to be comparing all of the relevant things. And the reason why I'm going to be doing this video as a dedicated one, even though some of the things have been mentioned by me, but they're kind of scattered around in the unboxing and the announcement and in the review video. So I thought that it would be a useful idea to actually have one place, one dedicated video where all of these things are kind of collated so that people can find what they're looking for conveniently. So without further ado, let's pit those two against each other and see how they stack up. Alright, so here we go. On the left we have the A6X2 and on the right we have the A6X. And we're going to start this summary comparison thing with the design differences, and I'm just going to go through each quickly. The first difference is that A6X2 is now coming in an off-white grayish color instead of the white color that we had on the Supernote A6X. And to me, with the that's a much nicer balance and much nicer, more pleasant surface to work with, because there's less contrast between the surface of the screen and the frame than when you have pure white and this, because when you have pure white against the screen, it will always make the screen appear darker than it actually is. That's simply an optical illusion, but it actually isn't. So this is something that I prefer. The second thing is that obviously we have now two stripes on the A6X2 versus one stripe, and the second stripe has additional functionalities such as undo, redo, or page flipping in documents and I believe in notebooks as well, so you can quickly navigate to a single page. The other thing that I really prefer about the A6X2 design is that it is now perfectly symmetrical, which means that the borders on the side and the top are perfectly symmetrical, and that means that you can normally and easily use it in the portrait mode, which was not the case with the Supernote A6X because it had that bottom, and it certainly wasn't the case that you can turn it upside down if that's what you actually want to. So that is now an option, and that's something that's pretty sweet. Obviously a huge plus and a huge point of Supernote A6X2 is that it is of a modular design. So that means that if somewhere along the line one of the vital components like the battery or the power switch or some components of the main board, they maybe fail, or mostly like the battery, if it starts kind of draining after many years, you don't have to go to a specialist, you don't have to do anything really weird. You just order a new battery and you can swap the battery in the comfort of your own home, which is a huge plus compared to the Supernote, which is technically openable, but it is not designed to be open. So you can easily screw it up, while this is actually designed to be opened and designed to be serviceable, and that is a major difference between these two. And finally, while we're on the back as well, the cover fastening method, we have gone from a mechanical rail that was used on the A6X2 to magnets, top and bottom on the A6X2. I don't know which one. I probably said something wrong, but this is on the A6X, and on the A6X2 we have the magnets, which is definitely gonna hold the device less securely because it's not mechanical, but it does hold it really secure for all normal usage scenarios. Not the fall stuff. If it falls, it's going to fall out of the magnets. They are not going to hold that, but for everything else, like completely normal use, everyday use, that's going to hold it more than good enough. And also the convenience of putting the device in and out of cover is a lot more on the A6X2 than with the stripe. So it depends actually what you prefer. For me, for daily convenience and daily use, the magnets on the A6X2 prevail. But yeah, there's something to be said about the mechanical, the way it just holds a device more securely. Dimensions are mostly the same, but the new one is actually thinner, 0.4 of a millimeter thinner than the old one. So that also makes it quite nice. Although it is a little bit heavier. I believe that it is at 266 grams versus 255 grams. In reality, I don't really feel that difference because it's just 11 grams. And the other design, major design difference is that the surface that you're writing on the A6X2, the one that on the A6X, pardon, we had the Feel Right 1, which is basically trying to mimic the gel-like type of writing, and it is smooth, it is kind of softish, but it can feel a tiny bit sticky at some points, depending on the pressure and how you write on it. Whereas the A6X2 has a Feel Right 2, which is a more rougher type of surface, and it's designed to mimic the feeling of writing like on a paper-like surface, but it still has the same properties like the Feel Right, which means that it is able to use the ceramic nibs, and it has that self-healing property, which means that, you know, when you write on it, it will eventually kind of go back because it's a type of a specialized rubber that's basically used. Both of these have a problem. When you press really hard, they can get kind of sticky, but as far as the writing goes, it's a very different feel. So smooth and gel-like writing on the Feel Right 1, and somewhat paper-like, more paper-like-ish on the A6X2 or Feel Right 2. I wouldn't characterize it as paper-like, but it is a bit more rougher and a bit more papery than the previous one. Now quickly over the specs. So we have the Cortex A35 with 4 cores at 1.8 gigahertz versus the Cortex A55, so 2 generations newer, which is still 4 cores and 1.8 gigahertz. And what we've seen in tests is basically that this CPU, even though on paper it has the same performance, same clocks, it has better performance and better efficiency. On the old one we had 2 gigabytes of RAM, on the new one that doubles and we have 4 gigabytes of RAM, same amount of storage, 32 gigabytes on both of them, but the new one has the expandable SD card slot so that you can actually upgrade it to, technically they say up to 2 terabytes, but I don't know which cards are going to be, what it's going to tolerate for that kind of capacity, because the one that I have here is 200 gigabytes or 400, and that works fine. Battery, surprisingly, battery went down in capacity. So on the old one we had 2,900 milliamps, on the new one we have 2,700 milliamps. But that again just shows how well balanced this device is, because when I did the battery test, the battery life is exactly the same in all conditions on both the devices, despite the new one actually having a slightly smaller battery. And I believe that is to do with those new internals, that they're simply newer, 2 generations newer, and therefore they are more frugal and require less power when working. As I said, the dimensions and weight, we've already mentioned that in design, but one thing that's really important is that on the Supernote A6 or A6X, we had 1-year warranty, but on the Nomad, both versions, because of its modular design, you get actually 2 years of factory warranty, which is definitely something to keep in mind. All right, so both of these devices are, as the advertising says, for those who write. So the most important aspect of it is the writing capabilities, functionalities, that's on one side, and the writing capabilities are identical on both of them. In fact, all of the functionalities are virtually completely identical on both of the devices. The only difference is that second stripe that you have on this one, but as far as tools and everything else goes, exactly the same on both of them. So you're not missing out on the functionality side of things, both of them exactly the same. Now, as far as the writing feel goes and the writing experience goes, that is naturally going to be quite different. Now, full disclosure, I have spent quite a lot of time with the A6X and the A5X, or meaning Feel-Write 1. And while it is a specific type of a feel, that's not going to be for everyone. So if you're looking for raspy, papery stuff, that's not it. But what it does is that in combination with the ceramic nib that you actually have here, it just created this really nice balance of writing where you can write really, really effortlessly. So you had good resistance, it felt smooth but not slippery, it's really nice, and it had a really, really good speed at 24.6 milliseconds. Now, when I switch directly from one to the other and I go to A6X2, and more importantly the Feel-Write 2, yes, I do feel that paperiness, raspiness. I have to be honest, I don't feel the paperiness, I feel that the surface is rougher. That's what I do feel. However, that is a secondary thing for me. The primary thing that I feel, and even now after several weeks of living with and using the Supernote A6X2, or actually over a month now, my main impression stays, and that is when I compare the Feel-Write 1 to the Feel-Write 2, Feel-Write 2 feels harder and more slippery than the Feel-Write 1, and not in a good way. So in all honesty, I actually slightly prefer the feeling of the Feel-Write 1 than the Feel-Write 2. Now, from what I understand, I seem to be in minority, so that just seems to be like a personal preference. Now, by no means does the Feel-Write 2 feel bad or anything. No, it feels really, really good. Both of them actually feel really good. And some people are going to prefer that. But for my personal preference, that is my impression. That is how I see it. Now, I have to say one thing though, on the hardness level. Just by accident, I was just on a phone call and I was fiddling around and I started writing here with my pen, and then I noticed something strange, and that is when I put my pen down here and start writing, it's different than when I write on the screen. And the main difference, it's really subtle, but you can even hear it with the sound. Let me just move this one so you can hear. Okay, so the difference in that initial thump or clack, you can see how much more duller it is and sharper here. And that is simply because the surface underneath the Feel-Write here is, I believe, plastic, and the surface underneath here is glass. And that is the hardness that I actually feel. So I don't feel that hardness that I comment on when I'm writing here. I do feel it when I'm writing on the screen. And that to me shows that the hardness quality that I'm commenting on comes from the glass material that was that's on the screen here. On the Supernote A6X, I don't get that difference. It feels the same. I don't know if they're using a plastic screen here or a glass one, but this is just something that I've noticed and something that I believe is important to kind of mention. So, writing speed wise though, A6X2 completely kind of dominates the A6X because it's one of the two currently fastest devices on the market, e-ink devices in the market, with a writing latency of 17.5 milliseconds. So we do have a considerable difference in writing latency speed, and it is actually something, even though both are really fast, you do feel it, especially when you use it a lot and you go back to this one. I actually can see a little bit of a lag here, whereas when you're writing on the Supernote A6X2, it's basically instantaneous. Feels like it's instantaneous. As far as the screen resistance goes, this one, the Feel-Right 2 or the A6X2, has around the screen resistance of around 20.23% resistance of a surface of a paper, and this one, because of that stickiness quality that I've talked about, gives a false result, but it does give that stickiness, so it gives like 45.21% of resistance, but that's an anomalous result, mainly because it's the resistance is not because of the surface roughness, it's because of the surface stickiness, so shall we say. So yeah, but this one feels a little bit more like paper, this one a little bit more like gel-like, this one is a lot faster than the old one. Both have exactly the same functionalities, and my personal preference is that while I do like the writing on the Feel-Right 2, when I compare them back to back, I do like the Feel-Right 1 feel a little bit more, but not enough to make me wanna go back, so I continue using the A6X2 without any problems, but I do continually feel that those two attributes harder and a bit more slippery than the Feel-Right 1 with this pen. So the way that I actually circumvent this is that I don't use the ceramic nib pen on the A6X2. I use the soft felt nib pen, and then I get the proper amount of resistance and a bit more softness, and then it just works for me. As I mentioned, the battery life, despite there's a small difference that the A6X2 has a slightly smaller battery than the A6X, the battery life measurements in real life are exactly the same, and basically you can expect around 25 hours of continuous reading time per charge for either of the two devices, or around 10 hours per charge of continuous writing on either of the two devices, and that's more than enough to actually get you through a week, depending on actually how you use it, but it's sufficient amount of battery life that just, yeah, there's no battery life anxiety with either of these two devices. All right, so now I'm gonna compare the performance between the two devices, and what I'm gonna be doing is opening for the first time since the power up the same exact document, and we're gonna navigate a few pages and yeah, just see how it behaves, close it down, and then yeah, you guys can see the comparative performance, and we'll see if it's close, identical, or yeah, if there's a huge difference. So 3, 2, 1, go. And okay, so dramatically faster opening speeds on the A6X2 than with the A6X, and we're using the exact same document. So let's start navigating through the same pages. So what we're gonna try and do is we're gonna go to the beginning on both of them. Okay, navigation through the document seems to be exactly the same, so let's activate the same hyperlink here. Faster, considerably faster, yet again on the same document. So now let's flip pages. Oh, yeah, for that I need to check. Let's make the same. Let's see here. Where's my? There we go. So we're gonna enable a tap, and here we're also gonna enable. Nope, that's my camera angle. Tap. All right. So now we should be able to flip pages. Okay, so flipping pages seems to be identical, and the screen refresh speed seems to be identical on both of them. Let's see the precision. So we're starting at page 23. I'm gonna tap 10 times and see who misses out the taps. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What I can see is that I probably tapped a hyperlink somewhere in there. So let's get back to page 23. Okay, No, again, 23, go. All right, and here also, let's go page 23, go. All right, so let's try again, but this time I'm gonna be here on the edge. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, this one missed a few, this one didn't miss at all. So I have 0 misses on the A6X2. I did 10 taps, I did 10 pages flipping. On the A6X, I did 10 flips, and I only got 6 pages. So let's advance it up to 33 and do it again, just to see if it repeats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I can see that it's missing. We have 1 missed on the A6X2, and we have 4 missed on the A6X. So as far as, and let's see the closing of the document, or maybe can we see the export speed as well? So let's do export. Okay, let's original, all pages. Yep, we'll just export it as the original PDF and go. And actually A6X was a tiny bit faster, and let's just jump to it. But in the overall kind of operation here, this was a lot faster. So let's open it up again and see if we have very similar, but A6X2 is still faster. So as far as reading performance and responsiveness goes, I think the A6X2 again is a big upgrade over the A6X, because it opens up the files faster, it navigates a lot more precisely, and the speed is going to be the same, but the precision of actually taking responsiveness is going to be a lot better, and overall it's just a more faster and more responsive device than the A6X is. All right, and now I'm gonna do comparative performance comparisons. That was a terrible sentence. I wish I did some scripts here and there. Anyway, so yeah, I'm gonna compare the performance, general system performance between these two, and we're first gonna start with wake up and sleep. So I'm just gonna press the button at the same time, and I did. Okay, so there we go, same time sleep. A6X is faster. It's very let me try and be more precise here. So okay, strangely, wake up speed is actually faster on the A6X than it is on the A6X2. It's nothing dramatic, but it is definitely there. Going to sleep is pretty much the same. So go figure. All right, and now let's check just the general menu functionality and overall functionality of the device. So the first thing that I'm going to do is slide down. A lot more responsive on the A6X2. Let's do it again. Again, it's a lot more responsive and faster than the A6X2. Consistently faster and more responsive on the A6X2. So now let's double check, I don't know, let's open up digests. And again, much faster functionality here. So then we can go back, and then we're gonna go into files. Pretty much the same functionality here. Let's go into a folder. It's the same thing here. Let's go out. Okay. Okay, so overall functionality seems to be, and navigation seems to be pretty much the same around the menu navigation, hopping and things like that. Pretty much the same on both of them, but the appearance of the main menu is a lot faster actually on the A6X2, and that is a very consistent thing to see. All right, so the last thing that we have now is the power on and power off speeds comparative, so let's do that. All right, so let's power them on. So 3, 2, 1, go. Holding the button until there we go. So they are starting so far roughly the similar speed. this is identical so far. And A6X2 is already on, and this one as well. Okay, so a couple of seconds faster startup time on the A6X2, and let's see how fast do we get the prompt for shutdown. Holding faster on the A6X2 as well, and the shutdown itself. Faster on the A6X, but not by much. So overall, your power on and menu for powering down is faster on the A6X2, and power down is a tiny bit faster on the A6X. Well, okay, so it's kind of predictable and kind of not, because Supernote have, or Ratta rather, have undersold the A6X2 so much when they were announcing it, because they kept saying, oh no, don't expect performance upgrades, don't expect this, don't expect that. But, you know, despite not having more cores or more gigahertz, we have 2 generations more modern internals in this when compared to the A6X, and it feels it. It's more interactive, it's more responsive, it's faster, it's more economical on the battery life as well, and all of these things, and it is a cumulative step up in the performance impression when you're comparing it to the A6X, for example, because A6X was always slow to sluggish kind of device, but when you actually make a jump to A6X2, that is improved. It's still not blisteringly fast or anything, but it's definitely moving in the faster direction. Now, as far as the rest of the stuff, I mean, the only other thing that I found surprising was the Feel-Right 1 versus Feel-Right 2, but I've made my comments extensively throughout the videos. I'm not going to repeat myself. So what I'm interested at this point is basically what your impressions are. Have you been using A6X maybe, and then have you moved on to the new generation here? What your impressions are. So hopefully this video helps those who are interested in the A6X2 and are thinking like, hey, what about these two? Hopefully this video feels that kind of neat. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. That really does help the channel. And visit mydeepguide.com/shop to check out the MDO and MMP. More information about both of those products you can find in the links to their dedicated playlist lists in the description, video description below. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video. Bye.